Hello viewers, and welcome to this lecture on crew designations, contracts and guild rules. In this lecture, we're going to discuss some of the aspects of filmmaking that arise from its being an industry. And of course, filmmaking is a multi-billion-dollar industry that employs millions of people worldwide. And just like in any other industry, it involves large teams of people coming together to produce the final goods. So in a way, the leader of a filmmaking unit, the producer, is similar to the CEO of a large corporation, in that he has to manage several different teams with different skill sets and make sure that they work in harmony and they complement each other to produce the best possible product. However, the job of a producer is considerably more difficult than that of a CEO. A producer has to deal with teams of people who are often creative people, who have volatile temperaments, and therefore the possibility of conflict and confusion is much higher than in, say, a car manufacturing company. Therefore, it is very important that in the teams, the lines be drawn, the job designations be very clearly specified, and the hierarchy of command be well known so that the team can function in tandem. In this lecture, we are going to discuss what the composition of a typical film crew, what the various designations are, and what is the job responsibility of each individual who is manning these designations. You can see now the following chart, which shows the major departments that function in a film crew. As you can see, the producer is at the top of the hierarchy, and there is a production department which reports directly to him. The director, on the other hand, also reports to the producer, and the head of the departments of the other important departments all report to the director. Some of these important departments are the Department of Camera, the Sound Department, the Post-Production Department, and the Production Design Department. Within each of these departments, you have various designations, and there are specific job responsibilities which have to be fulfilled by the people holding these designations. Before we go into the individual departments, let us spend a moment to discuss the three most important members of the creative team. That is the producer, the director, and the screenwriter. The reason why these three members are considered the key creative team is because any of them can potentially be the initiator of a project. Generally, it's the producer who initiates a project. He or she would commission a certain screenwriter to write a script either based on an existing story or an original idea. And when that script is ready, he or she would discuss that with the director, and then they would go on to form the rest of the team. However, it is also possible that a screenwriter by himself might pitch a story to a director or a producer, and then they might come on board and start the process of filmmaking. If the film is a baby, the producer is the father of the baby. The producer is the one person who has to be present or who supervises the entire process of the production of the film from the beginning, from the conceptualization stage to its final release. So the producer would control and supervise aspects like raising funds, pitching the concept to investors, preparing a budget, hiring the crew, making sure that the shoot happens on time in an efficient and within the particular budget, negotiating with distributors and for the publicity and distribution of the film, and taking care of the entire budget of the film. The director, on the other hand, is in charge of the creative and the technical aspects of the film. As we have noticed, all the technical departments, the creative departments, they report to the director. So the overall look of the film, the storytelling aspects, even all the technical matters of the film, they are ultimately the responsibility of the director. During the pre-production phase, the director would be coordinating with the producer and the screenwriter to finalize the script. He would also obviously be deeply involved in the casting process, not only of the actors, but also of the rest of the technical team. During the shooting, his major responsibilities would include guiding the actors, deciding on the placement of the cameras for each shot, on the content and duration of each shot, of the overall look of the entire film. The screenwriter is responsible for researching the story, for writing it and delivering it in the proper format to the producer. As we have discussed earlier, sometimes the screenwriters themselves come up with story ideas or even finished films, and they pitch it to producers and directors. In such a case, it is often seen that the producer or the director might want certain modifications in the story, or they might want to tell it from a different angle, and it is then the screenwriter's job to rewrite the story to meet those specifications. This can be done by the person who has initiated the project, or sometimes a different screenwriter might be hired to do the rewrites. Now we'll discuss the production department. Now the persons working in the production department can be broadly divided into two groups. The first group is mainly concerned with the monetary aspects of the production. At the top of this group lies, of course, the executive producer. The executive producer is a person who is himself or herself an investor in the film or has helped to raise the funding for the film. Then you have the line producer. The line producer generally manages the budget of a film. In addition, they might also look after the day-to-day logistics of the film shoot itself. However, in many units, this second job is taken care of by the production manager. The production manager is in charge of the logistical aspects of the shoot, and he oversees the day-to-day aspects of it. He has to make sure that the shoot remains within budget. He is in charge of hiring of equipment, of the actors and the crew members, and of making sure that they come on time. Also of making sure that the shoot happens within the time allotted and within the budget itself. The production manager generally works under the supervision of the line producer. Next person in this team would be the production accountant. This is mainly an office job. The production accountant works with the producer in the producer's office to manage the day-to-day finances of the film. They keep a record of the daily expenses and make sure that it remains within the budget allotted to it. The next group of people that we're going to talk about are not concerned directly with the monetary aspects of the shoot, but they help in the management of the daily shooting. Sometimes these posts, for example, the posts of the first assistant director, the second assistant director, the production runner, are considered as part of the direction team. However, in most international productions, they fall under the production team. The first and most important of these posts, of course, is that of the first assistant director. During a shoot, even though the director is leading a team of hundreds of people, it is impossible for him to monitor the activities of each of them individually. In fact, during most shoots, a director would concentrate mainly on making sure that the performances of the actors is just right, and also that the look of the film comes out right. All other aspects of the film are usually, especially the management aspects of the film, are usually left to the first assistant director. So the first assistant director would make sure that the other members of the crew, the camera team, the sound team, the logistics, they are all working in tandem, that the shoot is happening smoothly and on schedule, that every shot that has been planned has actually been taken. All of this, all the logistical and management aspects of the shoot become the headache of the first assistant director. It is the job of the first assistant director to create an environment and to provide the support to the director and the principal actors as well as the principal technicians to make sure that they can focus on their work while everything else, the entire circus around them that's happening, goes off smoothly and does not affect their work. The second assistant director reports to the first assistant director and does the jobs that are assigned to him by the first assistant director. In most film shoots, there are multiple second assistant directors looking after various aspects of the shoot. In addition to this, it is often the second assistant director's job to prepare the call sheets. The call sheet is a requirement that lets the entire unit know the schedule of the next day's shoot as well as the important requirements for it. The production assistant, who is also often known as the production runner or the spot boy, assists the first assistant director or the second assistant director with specific jobs on set. They also often help around in the production office itself. This is usually a beginner's job, and sometimes interns or people who have just joined the industry are given this post. Another very important person in this team is the script supervisor or the continuity person. In a previous lecture, we have already discussed the importance of continuity and how it works in a film. And it is principally the job of this script supervisor to make sure that the shooting happens according to the rules of continuity. They keep notes of every shot of the properties, the costumes, even the camera angles and the direction of motion and looks of the particular actors, and they make sure that in the subsequent shots, these same directions, the costumes and properties are the same. It is their job to make sure that even if a scene is shot over a period of several days or even months, when it's all put together, it seems like it's a continuous piece of action that has been shot at one go. Two other important members of the production team are the casting director and the location manager. Both of them work principally in the pre-production phase. The casting director's job is to understand the requirements of actors for a particular film. He works closely in concert with the producer and the director to understand what are the requirements for each role in a particular film and to suggest actors for them. The location manager performs a similar function with respect to the locations in which the film is to be shot. They usually have a database of thousands of locations, and they suggest specific locations that may be suitable for filming scenes in a particular film. They're also responsible for getting the necessary permissions if required, and during the shoot, they are the interface between the filming crew and the rest of the community. The camera department is led by the director of photography, who is in charge of the lighting of a particular film. He works closely in conjunction with the director to decide the setups, the camera positions for each particular shot, as well as the overall look of the film. In many films, the physical operation of the camera is not done by the director of photography himself, but by a person who specializes in just that. This person is called the camera operator. There are two important assistants for the director of photography, the first assistant cameraman and the second assistant cameraman. The first assistant cameraman is also often known as the focus puller, and his job is to make sure that the shots are in proper focus. It is the second assistant camera person's job to operate the clapper board. The second assistant also feeds the raw stock into the camera and keeps a record of when it is received and the amount of raw stock that has been used. However, in video shoots, of course, this function is no longer required. Instead, in video shoots, we have a different position. There's another important team that works in the camera department, is the dolly team, which is led by the dolly grip. They're in charge of laying the tracks and operating the dolly, on which you sometimes place the camera and the camera operator to take a particular shot. Another important position is that of the gaffer. The gaffer is also sometimes referred to as a chief lighting technician. He's in charge of the entire electrical setup that controls the lights of a particular set or a location. The sound department is led by the production sound mixer, who is also often sometimes known as the location recordist. The location recordist or the production sound mixer is in charge of the recording of the sound during the shoot. He has to take decisions like the use of equipment, the placement of the boom, and sometimes even live mixing during the shoot itself. The location sound recordist is assisted by a person called the boom operator. He's in charge of physically placing the boom in a position as desired by the location sound recordist in order to make sure that the best possible sound is recorded during the shoot. Another important department is the production design department. This is led by the production designer. The production designer is in charge of creating the physical visual appearance of the film. Therefore, he is in charge of the properties, the costumes, the makeup, the sets that have been built. In the pre-production phase, the production designer will often produce sketches of each set, giving an idea of the properties to be used, the look of the actors, their costumes, the color scheme, sometimes even an idea of the kind of lighting that might be used during the shoot. Under the production designer, you have three major departments, as I just mentioned: the art direction department, the makeup, and the costumes. They work according to the plan created by the production designer. The art director is in charge of creating the sets where the shooting is done. So he's in charge of physically erecting the sets as well as for decorating them with the properties that are required. Generally, you have a set decorator who takes over after the physical sets have been created in order to place the appropriate properties and to make sure that they go with the look and feel of the film. In addition to the art department, there is under the production, the overall head of the production design department, there is a costume department. And the costume designer's job is to design the costume for each character and for each scene, at least for the major characters for each scene. And according to those designs, the costumes are either bought or created individually for the film itself. Then there is a makeup artist and the hairstylist who then give the final touch to the look and appearance of each individual actor for the scene. Once the shooting of the film is complete, it moves into post-production. And in post-production, there are two main stages. The first is editing, and the second is the audio post-production. In editing, the footage that has been shot is then collected and ordered to tell the story of the film. This is often done by a person who's known as a film editor in films or an offline editor in video programs. Let me take a minute to explain what is offline editing. During the shooting of a film or a video program, the images captured are of a very high resolution, and therefore the amount of storage space that is required to store all of that is also very high, and it requires a computer of a very fast processing ability to be able to use that data. This is not really needed when you're just structuring the shots. So what is done is the shots are converted down to a low resolution images and sound, and then that is used to edit the film. Therefore, this editing, which is done with the low resolution pictures and sound, is called offline editing. Once the offline editing of a film is complete, then the high resolution images of the same film are used to do other work like adding of titles, graphics, color correction, special effects, etc. In the case of video programs, often all of this is done by the same person who is referred to as the online editor. However, in the case of film production, these jobs are often done by different people. For example, the color correction might be done by a specialist known as a colorist. The special effects required for a film would be the job of a special effects supervisor, and so on. Once the editing of a film is complete, the film moves into audio post-production. And the person in charge of this entire process is the sound designer. The major steps that are involved in the audio post-production of a film are, sometimes you need to do the dialogue re-recording of the film. The re-recordist's job is to re-record the dialogue of the movie in a studio. After that is done, the re-recording mixer balances the sound prepared by the dialogue, the sound effects, etc. There would be a music composer who would compose the music for the film. And after all of these are done, the final mixing of the film, mixing all these audio elements together, is again the job of the final mixer under the supervision of the sound designer. Sometimes the sound designer would do the final mixing of the film himself. One of the first steps of film production is to form the film crew that will make the film. This is usually done department-wise. That is, a director would often sit together with a producer and decide on the choice of the major departmental heads, like the director of photography, the sound designer, the editor, the production designer, etc. The producer would usually try to go with the wishes of the director, of course, subject to the availability of the persons involved and the budget of the film. Once the departmental heads are in place, they themselves then would give the list of people they want to be working in their departments. And again, it would be the job of the line producer to hire these people, to negotiate contracts, etc. While selecting persons to man the senior crew positions, it is important to keep a few things in mind. The first, of course, is the technical experience and capability of the person. And it must be borne in mind that different people have expertise in different fields, even within their overall domain. For example, you might have a camera person who has done extremely good work in one specific genre of filmmaking, say romantic comedy. But if you're making a film which is in the horror genre, then it doesn't make sense to hire him. It might be better to hire somebody who has experience in the genre in which you are making the film. The other important thing you have to keep in mind while building a team is the interpersonal relationship or the chemistry between the team. Filmmaking, unlike other industrial activities, is a creative job, and the people working in this field are creative people with volatile temperaments, and whether or not the film ultimately turns out to be good depends not only on the individual level of creativity or skill of the people, but also how well they complement each other. What happens generally is that over the years, people develop a circle of other professionals whom they are comfortable with whom they gel, and with whom they produce the best work. And such groups of people tend to like to work together again and again. In most countries, including in India, the film industry is a largely unorganized sector, and therefore there has been a history of exploitation in this industry. To counter this, in almost all the regions, there have come up unions or guilds of technicians, and they have negotiated with the producers' associations to form a certain set of guidelines as to how hiring should happen in films, what kind of contracts or what kind of salaries technicians should be paid. When you are hiring crew members for your team, it is important to know the relevant guild rules of your region and to adhere to them. Increasingly, it is the norm these days that when senior technicians or actors are hired, there is a formal contract between the production company and the actor or the technician. Sometimes, in place of a contract, there is also something called a deal memo, which is which we can think of as an informal version of the contract, which also spells out the terms and conditions of the payment and working conditions of the relevant crew member. And I have here with me a copy of a deal memo, that sort of a template of a deal memo, which can be signed between a director of photography and a production company. As you can see, the contract, as the case might be, specifies not only the number of days for which the technician is being hired, the payment that they are being done, but also the number of hours of work, the overtime that the person might be paid, the perks, the transportation, the accommodation that is to be provided to them, the number of people who would be working under that person, conditions under which the contract might be terminated. All of these are specified in the deal memo or the contract. Alfred Hitchcock, in a memorable quote, said that films are basically made in the pre-production stage. What he meant is that the success or failure of a film depends on how much work or the quality of work that has been done at this stage, and the entire planning, the formation of the team is what determines the fate of the film ultimately. While planning the division of the shots, the look of the film, the sets that have to be created is important, it is equally, if not more important, to hire the right people who are going to do these jobs. That is, the right crew for the team. And apart from, as I've mentioned, apart from just the technical proficiency, it is very important that the team works together as a happy unit, because typically during a film shoot, you can expect to spend much more time with your co-workers in the team than with your own family. During the shoot, in fact, the film unit often becomes like a family. Therefore, you should give as much importance and as much thought into choosing your fellow team members in a film. What decisions you take at this stage will affect the success or failure of your project in the months to come. Forming the right team for a film is an art in itself. It requires knowledge of the applicable rules. It requires understanding of the creative abilities of the crew members. It requires a knowledge or an insight into their individual temperaments and the ability to predict how they will fit into the overall team and whether they will be able to creatively contribute to your project.